Ryan,
Tony, and Crystal.
We can't guarantee that you're gonna look great, but if you wanna stay in shape, well, you better hit the GymWits. That's right, man. You tell 'em.
welcome to the GymWits podcast. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, a.k.a. Tips with Tony, a registered dietitian.
And we are the GymWits. So Justin lucked out because my wife is away on vacation, and he got to see, I guess, what really legitimately could be called kind of a modern, I don't know, cultural masterpiece.
Yep.
And you got to see Hamilton.
Yep.
What'd you think?
Yeah, it's his...
I mean, you did miss the first 25 minutes, but yeah, what'd you think?
I think it's the gold standard. Not that I watch too many musicals, but I think it's the gold standard for the modern musical. I think it's an instant classic. Only been around for a few years, but it's as good as anything. Really, it's right up there with all the greats as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's great. I've seen it 3 times now. I saw it kind of with the original cast, I guess, in the first 6 months or so that it was out. Then I saw it in San Francisco, and I got to see it again. And so it's one of those things. Not, I go to musicals, but I'm not the biggest musical guy in the world. But it's definitely something that you can see over and over. You can listen to the soundtrack, which is also in itself, really, really good. But yeah, no, it was a good show. I'm glad you had a chance to see it, especially.
Yeah, me too.
What's the main storyline for people who are listening? Like, what do you think?
It's the life of. I mean, it's based on a biography of Alexander Hamilton, and I have not read the biography, so I don't know how true to his life the story was. I know that there have been some complaints that some things were embellished, but that's what you get whenever you get a story.
How anyone could
clearly. So one of the cool things about it, like if you're not, obviously there's a lot of hip hop, a lot, and all the main cast, while they're all playing kind of, our white founding fathers, it's mostly black and Hispanic actors playing it, which is just interesting, makes for an interesting dynamic for the show. I mean, it's just really, really well done. It's very, very smart. It's again, the music is really catchy, and it really does a great job of kind of telling his life story. However, however accurate or not it is. But I have been wanting to read the book and read the biography. And apparently, with Lin-Manuel Miranda was like on a vacation and was reading it, and was inspired by reading his biography to write this story about a guy who we don't learn all that much about, in school. And,
so here's the really crazy thing is that he wrote it all. He wrote all the lyrics and the music. Yeah. And I read that it took him 6 years to do that.
Really?
I mean, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's an astounding amount of work.
Yeah.
Generally, when people write a musical, you have someone who writes the music, you have someone who writes the lyrics, and then you have the script as well. He wrote it all.
Yeah,
and it's an insane amount of work.
It's an achievement, and when you consider I'm not a big Broadway person, but I know people who are really big Broadway people who say there's so many kind of in jokes there. There's some kind of references to hip hop from when we were growing up. There's different kinds of music, whether it is rap and hip hop or kind of Beatles-esque, like when what's his face when King George is out.
Beatles-esque, there's R&B, there's sort of like
rockabilly type of stuff. It's just kind of crazy the variety of music.
Definitely sounds interesting.
And it's just a really great show, and I could see it over and over again. Like next time the lottery comes out, I'll try again. and we had really good seats. This is the first time I had
we got good seats.
2000 I had crap seats. This time was like, okay, these are legitimately like good seats.
All right, so now we've given an endorsement for free for him.
Yes, right? Exactly. They really need our business.
I know.
It's like sold out for like years.
So Tone, I heard that you had an interesting experience on the subway.
Yeah.
It's always an interesting experience on the subway. All you got to do is hang out on the subway for a little while. Something's going to happen.
No, it was crazy. I was just sitting there minding my own business, actually listening to our most recent podcast episode.
See, that's what people should be doing on the subway. It's our podcast.
And all of a sudden, the girl sitting next to me literally fell on me. like legitimately fell on me and she fainted. But luckily she was from a sitting state, so she didn't get injured or anything. But eventually she finally came to, and we asked her like, are you okay? And at first she wasn't responding. There was two women across from me. One of them was like, would you like some water? She kind of grabbed the water from her, started drinking it, and then she finally like said something, and I'm like, are you okay? Are you diabetic? And she said, no, I'm not diabetic. I said, have you fainted before? She said, last time I fainted was 6 years ago. So they got the conductor, they brought her. I had an orange in my bag. I was like, do you want an orange? I gave her the orange. She was very weak. It was really scary, actually, because she looked very healthy, and she looked honestly around my age, like young. And finally the conductor came over and then asked, like, do you want us to call someone? Because she seemed to like be a little bit better, but she said, yeah, I don't have any feeling in my right arm. So very, very scary. I hope she's okay. I don't know. I left her with the paramedics and I had to go, but hopefully she's fine. But it was very interesting this morning. And I know we were talking before we like started recording how it's just, I don't think it's a coincidence that like the woman who had the water bottle was sitting directly across from her. The other woman knew how to find the conductor. I so happened to have an orange in my bag, which honestly, to be honest, I was like, do I take the clementine or the orange? And I took the clementine because I was like, it's easier to peel. And like, I would have never been able to peel it for her if I took the orange. So I know this might sound like a stretch, but I believe that.
I think we need to have an episode on whether or not the coincidences exist.
I feel like
or that
Ryan.
they don't.
In my brain. Yeah, no.
Debate number 3. Ryan's like, I'm thinking it's God intervention. He's like, there's no such thing as God. And
well, no, not so much. I think God just chose that person over the person who fell into the tracks and got hit by the train today. But that's okay.
Oh my goodness, I can't.
Somebody did fall into the tracks and die today. But
oh wow,
yeah.
What?
So
God.
so God chose that person over that other. It didn't have enough energy to. It's okay. I'll stop.
Anyways,
so
it was an interesting morning.
Did the girl mention that she hadn't eaten, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. She said she hadn't eaten, and that's why I offered her the orange. She said, I think maybe my blood sugars are low, and that's when I was like, oh, are you a diabetic? And she said, no, I just don't feel well, and I don't eat in the mornings. I get a little faint, but like this is real faint. Like she was sweating. It was bad. It was really bad.
So a little bit of a word of wisdom. Not that I'm a doctor, or a dietitian, or a health professional, but if you fainted before because you haven't and you haven't eaten in the morning, and we don't know if they're necessarily correlated, but they very much so might be, I would recommend eating in the morning, right? The reason why is because then you might not faint. So just be aware of stuff like that. And I know it sounds funny, and a friend of mine would always say common sense is not always that common. But look, I've been doing the intermittent fasting, so I don't eat in the morning, and I have not had a problem yet. Maybe if there was one time where it's been going on really long and I feel really hungry or faint, then I eat. Right, but in general, it doesn't happen. So I know I'm okay for at least the time being until I know otherwise. But if you've had an experience before where you've gotten sick, you've gotten dizzy, you fainted, and it's and it's possibly due to the fact that you haven't eaten, probably be a good idea to eat.
Well, no, I would push back a little bit in that, like you don't know.
She said in this case that her blood sugar was low.
Okay.
Well,
she was assuming.
Yeah, she's assuming, and that's a big assumption. The problem with that is that it's an assumption that a lot of people make without knowing for sure. So and I'll push back one more, is that you're not doing something that's going to exacerbate it. So eating in the morning, there's a chance that that's what's caused it. So by eating in the morning, even if that's not the cause, but you're taking away the chance that it is, right? So or you're not addressing what the real issue is.
Oh, you should definitely address. You should definitely address the issue. But if you fainted before and it's because you haven't eaten in the morning, right? Yes, it doesn't mean.
How about
that
if you faint, you figure out why you fainted?
You should definitely figure out why you fainted. And for all we know, she does know, and maybe in her sort of out there state, it was because she hadn't eaten. But in general, and maybe she knew that she shouldn't do that, or maybe that she's had issues before. It's, to me, by the tone of her conversation, it sounded like she was aware that when she doesn't eat in the morning, she feels faint. She mentioned something along those lines.
Yeah, because she wouldn't have said...
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about this issue. I'm just talking about Justin's.
I'll stand by. I stand by it. If you fainted in the morning and you felt dizzy and stuff, and when you haven't eaten.
Yeah, if there's a pattern, sure.
Yeah, well, of course.
Like, but if it happens once, and
like anything strange could happen once. If like you go your whole life without eating in the morning, and like one random time you get sick and you faint, that maybe it has nothing to do with it. But if it's a pattern, clearly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Hey,
common sense is not that common, right? Yeah, right.
So, all right, well, so Tony, you have a news item, right? Or you have
an
article, yeah.
Yeah,
so
I came across this article. Let me just pull it up. Oh, there it is. Okay. It's titled, Low Carb Diet Tied to Common Heart Rhythm Disorder. Study suggests using caution when restricting carbohydrates for weight loss. It was just released on March 6th of this year, 2018. And basically, it looked at, I want to say, 14,000 people spanning for more than 2 decades, which is it's the largest assessment they've ever seen of the association relationship between carbohydrates intake and AFib. So AFib is short for atrial fibrillation. It's basically a heart rhythm disorder where like it might skip a beat or stop. It's very dangerous. And it's very common actually. And a lot of things would happen. And actually, the reason how this came up is because they'll experiencing things like palpitations, dizziness, fatigue, and honestly, that's what this girl was expressing, right? And it's potentially
that can't be a coincidence. No. I agree with you, Tony. Like, there's no way that you read this study, you were preparing it, and then the day of the episode,
it's weird.
Right, it happens. Ryan, you're wrong about the whole coincidental thing.
It's really
I
weird.
Believe in God now.
But here's what's really interesting. They're more likely to have a stroke. She had no feeling in her arm. Like, I'm not saying that this is what happened, but I'm just saying like these were all symptoms that could easily be she has AFib. Like, it's actually kind of weird. But also obviously it can lead to heart failure, which is really dangerous as well. And so basically they were looking at the long-term effects of a low carbohydrate diet. It's really still kind of unclear, and there's a lot of mixed research out there. And we know that popular diets right now are things like the ketogenic diet, in the past things like Atkins, even paleo, restricting those foods that are, whole grains, fruits, certain starchy vegetables, and like beans and legumes and stuff like that. So when they were looking at it, it's a strong correlation. We can't say it's cause and effect, but there's a significant difference between someone following a low carbohydrate diet, moderate, and then not high carb, but just like, so this is where, as the, clinician looking in, what I see is the low carb range is anywhere below 45% of the daily calories, which is pretty standard. Like, I actually have people on where they're at like 40% if they're doing like trying to get lean and they work out a lot. I actually do something like that. The middle range is like 45 to 53% of the total calories, and then the other range was more than 53%. But like, the middle range is pretty concise. Under 45 and above 55, that could be a significant difference. Like, ketogenic diet could be 8%. Versus,
that's what I'm saying. Like 40% is still you're still getting enough carb. Like, right. It's not like 8% or something ridiculous.
Exactly. So that was my only kind of like thing I wanted to kind of pick apart with them and really see. It's like, what was the percentage of, like, because to me, 45 lower than 45%, 40 to 45 is not too low. It's low, and you might experience little things like, a little brain fog at first or like whatever, but that compared to like 20% or 8% or, keto is 3 to 5. Like, it's like, I think those are huge range. And even the opposite way, like 55%, 50 to 55% is pretty standard, I would say, of like a just general, the American diet, the general recommendations. An athlete, you might go up to like 60 or 65. I don't know if anyone really would do great on like 80%, because then you're probably not getting enough protein and healthy fats. So that was my only kind of pick with that study. Is like it was great in the sense it was the largest study. It was a strong correlation. Obviously, we need to know more, but I would love to be able to like
actually considered in the danger zone.
Yeah, like there's very low carb. Like I would love them for them to take now that group of that was at like 45% or less and do like maybe like a 35 to 40% range, a 20 to 25, or something like that. But in general, I just thought it was great for conversation.
Did you remember reading if they said it for how long the diet goes on for?
Well,
because I think that matters too. If like you're going for 2 months to prepare for a wedding, that would seem to be very, very different than if you're on a low carb, very low carb for a year or 3 years or just in general. So I think there's some people do it temporarily.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
It doesn't say how long the.
It's kind of, hold on, I have to read into it a little bit more. But as I'm reading, what do you guys think about this? Like,
well, it sort of goes back to what you've been saying and what we've been preaching for a long time is the importance of balance.
Yeah.
And once again, it kind of goes back to the common sense thing. Even common sense would dictate that a healthy overall diet, considering no particular issues for sort of an average person, would consist of a variety. Would consist of all the macros and variety of different foods. And it's to me the concept of cutting out an entire group just seems even with no medical background and no degree in diet, being a dietitian, would even seem to me, just a layman, that it would seem ridiculous to cut out almost an entire food group.
Mm-hmm.
So it just it's almost confirming this, that you want to be balanced, you want to be sensible about things. And once again, I've cut out the carbs, but for a very limited amount of times. Like when I needed to drop weight very fast in a month, I would do it for a month or so. But I never thought that doing even it's everything in the 90s, it was no fat, cut out all the fat.
I know.
Right then, towards the late 90s, it became cut out all the carbs.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember thinking the whole time, this just sounds ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Like we
know in science we need certain foods in large quantities, and that's our macronutrients. That's why they're called macros. Macro for large amounts.
Yeah, no, yeah, it helps give more evidence for not going into any extreme diets. I think in general, there seems to be a resurgence in the low carb or no carb thing with the ketogenic diet, and it's based on some sketchy science or limited studies, and it's one of those things where I know people who've had great success with it, but it's really not lasting, and there's a reason why there's very limited.
It's already starting to come out, and I'm really excited about it because it really is already. It's already. I didn't think this. I feel like it's been a fad for a while, but I definitely assumed it would be a fad for a lot longer. But I already think people are catching on and realizing.
I mean, it's tough with energy levels, and I think the more that we see, you need balance, and
it just can't be healthy. I'm sorry.
I mean, for any number of reasons, but then also you're looking at, if you're not eating, you're not eating carbs, where are you getting, the rest of your food from? Then are you increasing unhealthier sources of food? We talked about, we're going to possibly debate somebody on some vegan stuff. And while, I don't think, certain amounts of meat, red meats are going to be, fine, there is a level where too much can have some negative health effects. Yeah. And
are you eating?
So if you're replacing
with
those
tons
carbs,
of bacon,
with a lot of bacon and a lot of steaks and red meat and processed meats, like that's not healthy. So
yeah. I completely agree. I do want to just say, which is interesting, in this study, it says low carbohydrate diets were associated with increased risk of incidence of AFib regardless of the type of protein or fat used to replace the carbohydrate.
Cool. Okay, yeah. So,
which is interesting too. To know. So I think it's, in general though, it goes back to that balance, and obviously we would need to know more. And then to answer your question, Justin, it said over an average of 22 years of follow-up. So there.
Study was conducted over that, but we don't know how long the diets were.
The thing is like they weren't technically like on a diet. They were basically asked like a food frequency questionnaire.
Gotcha.
So it's not really like they were following a diet. It's just like, what do you eat most of? Like, so that's the thing. So like it was a big study, but obviously it's not too specific. So we can only, once again, see correlation, not cause and effect.
Is it a good enough study for you, Justin? Because I know you're very particular about what study.
14,000 people over 2 decades is, I think, a good time frame.
Size, and it's a great time, it's a great time frame.
Of course, association.
There's so many. No, I think it's a good study because it's not Captain Obvious, and it's bringing something that is very important. And if you see a correlation, then there is reason to continue the study, maybe dive a little bit more in depth into it, maybe a bigger control group with more specifics involved. Because obviously to prove cause and effect for something like this would take an incredible amount of research.
No, it takes. I mean, the whole process, which is why you should not look down on studies, is that it starts with Captain Obvious sometimes, and then the more and more you study, the more you tweak and turn and change things, you can build yourself.
I don't look down on studies. I just
you
look down on dumb studies.
But see, sometimes to get to a consensus, you do need some of the very basic, simple quote dumb studies. It's got to start somewhere. And I think, I'm messing with you a little bit, but
no, I know. I just don't think doing a study on
research is done.
A study on 7 people, right?
Sometimes that you got to start somewhere. Hey, you begin with your hypothesis.
Yeah, you could start by not wasting your time on a 7-person study.
All right, okay, you go. Don't know what to tell you on that. So, all right, so
look, Ryan, you're wrong about the studies and you're wrong about the coincidences, and it's no coincidence that we were talking about studies today.
Okay, sure.
I don't realize what I just said.
So let's see. Do you guys post lots of videos of your exercises online?
I do.
You do? Yeah. Okay. Why? Do you, Justin?
Oh, God.
No, not all.
You don't.
Nervous.
Okay, so you might be a narcissist then.
Really?
So this is a study.
I knew Tony was a narcissist.
So
I always knew it. I think she's a sociopath. Actually.
Basically it's that people who post their fitness routines to Facebook are more likely to be narcissists and have psychological problems.
Oh
who conducted this study?
So it's Brunel University in London.
Oh, so it was a study. Okay.
Look,
not
Justin,
for nothing. I attract a lot of narcissists. My ex was a narcissist, so.
So before you start to berate the study, Justin,
I like the study.
You've never read a study in your like a full research paper in your life. So before you start, just remember that. No, anyway, so it's Brunel University in London, and so it was basically. It's that people who document their exercise on social media tend to be narcissists, and the reason they think is that. Well, I'll explain how this study was done, and I'll kind of give you some of the reasoning. So, it's 555 users completed a survey, and they were testing the big 5 personality traits: extroversion, neuroticism, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. So, apparently, kind of based on these traits, you're able to kind of develop personality profiles. I don't know if you've dealt with this at all in schooling or anything.
Not really.
We have more more classes in psychology than I do.
Yeah.
What they found is that kind of people with narcissistic tendencies consistently posted about their achievements, and they think that it's built out of a need for validation. And then kind of what makes this kind of a kind of cycle, a problematic cycle, is that those kinds of posts, so like posts of your exercise, of your achievements, tended to receive more likes, and so those likes would validate that behavior, which then allows them to continue that behavior. So it's kind of this weird cycle where so even if people don't are frustrated by the person posting, sometimes they'll like it because that's the type of thing that gets liked. And then kind of from the research team, they kind of said that obviously further studies are needed, Justin, to look at responses to like specific static updates, topics, the likability of those people and of the posts, and try to flesh out
I think this is a dumb study.
puts people at risk. So I found it's pretty interesting.
So sorry, Tone. I'm going to disagree with you. I think it's a fascinating study.
So I actually think,
and I think it's a fascinating
too.
concept.
No, yeah. Not clearly not everybody that does that.
I think the proof is out.
No, but clearly not everybody that does this is a narcissist. But I think there is and it's kind of a chicken or the egg. Like, does being on social media encourage narcissistic behavior, and is that something that can be developed? Can you become more of a narcissist? I definitely feel that social media is a breeding ground for kind of self-absorbed behavior, and there is that feedback loop where if you get I know, like for me, I know what type of posts are going to get, a lot of likes. And I can tell you right now, I almost say, like, when I post something, I can tell you how many likes it can get. If it's a political post, it'll get about 5 likes, and I know the same 5 people will like it. If it's like a vacation post, it'll get a lot. If it's like, I did this, it'll get, and definitely when you do achieve something and post about it, it gets way more likes than if it's like, hey, here's my ham sandwich from today.
And just about that, likes are common, like dislikes are not, and you can't really dislike.
Yeah,
you could.
Well,
comment.
But
people aren't gonna comment, and people tend to not show their distaste in something unless it's something like political or polarizing. So most likely, people are just going to ignore a picture of someone working out or posing or whatnot. So it's sort of like inaccurate statement of how people actually feel about it, but for someone posting it, right, it's going to make them, well, look, like, people want to post, like, if someone has narcissistic tendencies and they're posting a picture of them posing or exercising so that people will like their behavior, will validate their behavior, right? There's sort of it's sort of like the situation where you can't lose. It's a no-lose situation. So either people are going to just ignore it, or people are going to like it. No one's going to say you're a narcissist for posting. Will you please stop?
The whole point.
So I'm saying it's a win-win for whoever's posting it. So it could feed into that.
And you're
That's
not
one little
thinking
aspect
about.
Of it.
Well, so I think the thing is, like, those posts get more likes, and you're not thinking about it that way. So you just see more likes, and it's like, oh, awesome. So that's, the thing is interesting, but I think there's a larger issue of, like, the culture of the internet and kind of what.
And there's one caveat with this, and that with Tony. Remember, you are in the business of health and fitness and wellness. So when you post something, it is part of your business,
and it's to help people,
right? Yeah. And it's to honestly,
it really is to help and motivate people. And I will say, though, it's interesting. So I'm a dietitian. I'm not a fitness trainer, right? I exercise as a way to motivate and inspire people because I live a healthy lifestyle. But to be honest, I was going to go away from the fitness stuff and focus more on the nutrition stuff. But my video views, I have one video that I have of me working out that has over 1,300 views versus, like, my nutrition stuff has, like, maybe 300-400, maybe 500.
Have to sit and listen to it instead of just watching something.
So as much as it's really not part of who I am, it definitely helps bring a different type of audience. And so it does help my business, and it helps people because it's like, oh, they're most people start with fitness, I think, before nutrition. So it's like, or whatever you want to say about it. But either way, it definitely, now I use it as a tactic. And so, although I was going to...
For you, it's business. You're not doing it to show off.
No.
Right?
No.
So, I think that there is a big difference. People that may not be in the fitness, health, wellness industry, just posting to show off, right? Look at how fast I can, and how long I can run for. Look at how much I can... There's something to be said about
proud of, like, your accomplishments.
I completely agree.
But you can tell the people who do post on where they'll post once in a while to show something, and then the ones that, like, it's constant.
Yeah, I wonder what the frequency was for them.
Yeah, so that I think there's some bit that I think you can tell the people that tend to do it more from a point of, like, look at me, attention seeking, versus, like, some of the ones that maybe
honestly, like, a post, unless you're sort of doing it for business reasons. Like, posting you finishing a marathon, I think, is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? If you were at a competition, great. If you're doing something along those lines. But it sort of does annoy me a little bit when I see a post, just finished running 6 miles. Like something like that, or just killer workout with someone flexing their bicep, like stuff like that. Annoys me.
There
really
are a couple people on my
sometimes.
feed that do that constant, and it's the same photo all the time, and there's nothing about it and they're not doing it like from a business angle or from a trying to motivate people. It's just like, look at me. But it's true because like the few times I do post things fitness wise, it's very rare. Maybe every.
But you'll show like a video,
but it'll be something like
the boxing stuff. Yeah,
that so I'll do that
more
occasionally, and that gets more views. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it does get more attention, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram to do that kind of stuff.
But once again, you're a professional.
Yeah.
In that. So
but no,
doing
I'm
this
just saying. But
helps
either
this podcast.
way,
It helps you. Right?
That
It's a
stuff.
different deal.
I'm just talking like from that kind of feedback
And
loop
sometimes
perspective.
you don't show stuff that makes you look good. Right, you'll be sparring, and like you might show a video that's just an even spar. Like
Yeah,
nothing,
I wouldn't post anything if I did something like that. I'm not gonna. Post
like you
something
might be more apt to show a video of you getting beat
I
up.
did. Well,
right?
when I was training in Thailand, I posted a video of me just getting thrown all over the place. I was like, why am I gonna All right, so I got one more study here, which is about the downsides of interval training. So this was published in the Journal of Sports Medicine and Physical Fitness, and it used U.S. government data spanning from 2007 through 2016, and it documented almost 4 million injuries. There are injuries, a variety of injuries: knee, shoulders, ankles, nerve damage, puncture wounds, sprains, strains, dislocations. So these are all injuries. So basically what they found is that they're kind of 51,000 injuries a year, and there was an increase that kind of coincided with
just a brief quick, where
in the U.S.
in the U.S. 51,000 in the U.S. Okay.
Yeah, U.S. government data.
Okay.
So
mean anything?
Does it? Okay, yeah, sorry.
The U.S. government can conduct a worldwide study.
Sure. So what they noticed is there is an increase in coincidences that kind of coincides with the increase in popularity of interval training. And this is a bit kind of Captain Obvious, which is that while interval training is great, and it's become kind of the big fountain of youth for a lot of people, and the big be all to end all, like this is what you got to do if you want to get in shape. And while there are some great benefits to it, I think there are risks, and there is a big risk of injury. And I think it regardless of fitness level, the intensity of the work is greater, the impact is greater, your heart's getting going up to not dangerous levels, but if you're unfit, it's potentially dangerous levels. And so some of the reasons for the injury has often to do with poor form and or overuse. So if you're not ready for something, that's where you're more likely to get injured. So it really kind of, to me, emphasizes the need to progress into things. So if you're starting to exercise and you want to do interval training, great, but you need to build up towards it, and you start slower and do it supervised and make sure you're doing it with proper form, because it is as good as it is, it can be potentially dangerous.
Well, I'm looking at what you have written as the most common injuries, right? And it's knee, shoulder, and ankle. Mm-hmm. And I think that would make a lot of sense, right? An ankle injury, it's really easy doing something that may do a lot. You might be doing a lot of jumping or fast running, stopping, starting, right? To roll your ankle is it's very, very common and very easy to do. Now, as far as the knee and the shoulder is concerned, we know that in sports, those are some of the most common injuries, right? With an upper body, people are always having issues. The shoulder is very complicated, and it's just so easy for something to go wrong with that, especially when the intensity is high. Once again, sort of Captain Obvious, but that's what it is. Show me a long-term athlete that has never had that does really intense sport that's never had an issue with his or her shoulder, right? And same thing with the knee. It's like what's always the most feared, right? And the injury is blowing out your knee or tearing your ACL, something like that. Very common. So especially in sports that have very high intensity. So and I guess with the use thing now, do they mention anything about whether it's just all sorts of injuries, not necessarily acute injuries or injuries based on long-term use, just everything, right? So, and yes, certainly if you are not fit to begin with, or you haven't trained in it before, and then you jump into something like an interval training without any experience or without building up to it, certainly that could raise, once again, Captain Obvious, but that could raise your risk as well. Would you agree with that statement?
I think I said that.
Right. Well, you mentioned the whole thing about you said regardless of fitness level.
Well, regardless of fitness level, the intensity of the work is going to increase your risk of injury. But
especially if you're
you're unfit. Yeah, sorry.
So yeah, I think the interval stuff is great, but just you got to be careful when you do it, or really with any exercise plan, as you've mentioned many times. But the higher the intensity. So what is it? Look, once again, sort of filing under Captain Obvious. But what is it about constantly stopping, starting, exploding, right, over and over again that causes such a risk for injury?
Well, first I say those are your words. You included that, but
I know I am. I'm asking you, nothing to do with study.
Okay, nothing to do with study. I mean, it's overuse. There's if you're fatigued, then there's a greater risk of injury. If you're not used to certain movements, it's just much easier for the kind of connective tissue to not be ready. And so if you're cutting corners or stopping, starting, and doing things that you're not used to, and it's kind of a whole body thing that you kind of, like we talk about proprioception and your kind of awareness of where you are in space. And if you're not there, so you haven't been doing the training, then sometimes like while you're zigging, your body's still zagging, and there's a chance for things to go wrong. So, that's where training becomes really important, and that's where progression becomes important. So it's if you play basketball every day, all day, then it's different for you than if somebody just getting into it or hasn't played in 5 years and they just jump on the court. And so. Again, progression is always important. Warming up is important. Kind of neuromuscular system is working, just as well as you're physically working, and so it's important that everything is kind of connected. And you decrease that risk if you progress up and you start slower and then build yourself back up than if you just kind of jump in and you just start going.
I did a really, really cool new workout yesterday that I could if I didn't take my time learning each movement, I probably could have injured myself. So it's basically like you got like a bench, and it's hard to explain this with no visuals. But it's you lay back on the bench, and then you kind of go up into a burpee, and then put your feet onto the bench and go into a push-up, and then go back sitting on the bench, laying back. It's like a roll-up burpee push-up thing. I've never done that workout before. That was really cool and really great. But the first time you did it, it really was just to get the form. The second time you tried to get for a certain amount in a certain amount of time. But if you're just new to that exercise, even me, I wasn't trying to beat my first time because that was the first time I've ever did the exercise. So I really was just each time really focusing on making sure my feet were on the bench, making sure when I went down to the push-up, I wasn't hurting my shoulders. There's things I think, and that was under supervision at a class, so people were watching. But if you're just trying to do that on your own, I think it's important to note make sure you have your form down first before you try to increase the intensity.
So Ryan, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit. So for someone who may be looking to get into interval training, are there some exercises that you would say might be a little too advanced, and there are a simpler versions, maybe a certain type of jump where there's a simpler jump that you can do rather than a more complicated one? Is there anything that comes to mind?
It's a tough question. Without
maybe just doing regular jumps instead of box jumps.
It depends.
Something like that.
It depends. So with the box jump, there's a kind of misperception that there's something wrong with the box jump. There's not. If you think about
I'm just giving an example of something that may be more complicated than another version of it.
What's the hard part of a jump?
I'm going to say the landing.
The landing. So if you jump onto what's harder, jumping onto a box? What's a harder landing, jumping onto a box, assuming you can make it, or landing on the floor?
I don't know.
Well, which
you would assume the floor because there's more.
No.
So I don't know.
Think about it. If you, let's say you put
it's harder to
let's say
land
you put
on a box.
12-inch, assuming you can make the landing. You have a 12-inch box off the floor versus the actual floor. Let's say your feet come up 24 inches, just for the 24 inches off the floor. So what's going to be more impact? Landing on something that's 12 inches below you, or landing on something that's 24 inches below you?
Or more impact. Well, I would say further down you have
more impact. So so a box jump actually is if you can make the jump.
The thing. I think
if you can clear the jump, then the box jump is the landing of the box jump is actually safer than just a straight up. I'm just throwing that at you. So just because then there's it's so.
But
answer it again. I say this all the time. It's kind of person specific. It depends on what that person's capable of. I think there are two parts. Is you want to consider a bunch of things. So impact is going to be important. How high they get their heart rate is going to be important. How dynamic are the actual movements? So let's say with the impact, we're talking about jumps. How's the landing? Even if it's let's say a push up, if you're throwing yourself, how hard is that? If you're doing a burpee, if somebody doesn't know how to do a burpee properly, there could be a ton of impact on the wrists and the shoulders and the elbows. If they're, doing a fast, let's say bench press or something, like if it's speed, then you might be, again, there's a lot going on. What's the range of motion? If it's full range, and speed, is there potential to hyperextend? Again, just how the speed of the movements is your body equipped to deal with the speed of the movements? You've got to consider the intensity of the work. How high are you getting your heart rate, and can you handle that? Are you prepared for that? Is the movement, is it a straightforward? Let's say if you're doing sprints, that's gonna be different versus doing sprinting and cutting and or doing skaters or doing things where you're landing on one leg, or you're landing on one leg versus two legs. Are you going forward, landing on one leg? Are you going to the side? Are you moving diagonally? So how dynamic are those movements? So those are all things to consider. So without knowing what the type of program is, and the person, it's hard to say, because you could do an interval program where you're literally just running. You could just get on a treadmill and sprint. In that case, it's less about, there's nothing to do with jumping, but it might be how hard the impact is on the treadmill. Are your knees okay? How fast are you going? Can you handle the speed? You might do an interval where you're just doing running in place. So, it's, again, without knowing the program and the exercises involved in the protocol, it's really hard to give advice on what to do, except to say, any movement that you have never done before, either do it very slowly or regress to something that might feel comfortable. So if it's a movement, like if it's a burpee, let's say, and you've done burpees before, you just haven't done it in a while, then you might just want to do them slower. But if you've never done a burpee before, then you might need to slow it down, or you might need to break it down into smaller pieces. Maybe you do one exercise is just the bottom part, and then another exercise is just the jumping. So there's a lot. It's hard to answer that question without knowing.
Okay, no, that definitely that answered the question of how to approach it. All right, well, I have an article that I want to discuss. CNN article, although a lot of it's been widely publicized, and it's that two former executives of a pharmaceutical company are facing criminal drug trafficking charges. And the long story short, they used either inaccurate or fake prescription numbers, and they sold to pharmacies that may have been shady pharmacies. They had a huge increase for both oxycodone and for fentanyl, which are very powerful prescription, very addictive painkillers. And basically, they're being charged for drug trafficking and also for trying to defraud the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, or the DEA. So for me, I think this is sort of about time. And but the only thing I hope for is that it's not just due to wanting to villainize people for the opioid epidemic in this country, but and not to just make an example out of them, just to sort of, because it's a good look to do, but actually to really start cracking down on this, right? We have illegal drug, certainly people selling illegal drugs, but drug companies for a long time, and you've heard me spiel about this, and they're not all bad, but I don't trust drug companies at all, right? This is my personal view on it. I felt like they are all about the bottom line, and that they value dollars instead of dollars instead of lives. So to see something like this, for me, actually, whether or not they get convicted, of it is nice because it once again, no proof behind this, but I feel like drug companies have skirted by and been able to get away with basically murder for almost literally for decades. So to see something like this sort of makes me happy. What do you think, Ryan? Do you have a view on it?
I mean, great. Good. They deserve it, but I think there are a lot of. I mean, there's so many issues in the industry that let's deal with some of the more structural issues. So like, how are we going to lower the drug prices? Maybe, and the incentives for them to kind of participate in certain unfair practices, and how do we fix our healthcare system, because it's a mess.
It's a whole other
level.
but
this it's like a Band-Aid to me.
So you think this is a Band-Aid, and you think it's
it's not even a Band-Aid. It's kind of like, oh look, the shiny thing. Look at that. Look, we're doing something about it. But then like, what are you actually
about that?
What are you actually going to do about the issues that we myriad of issues we have in our healthcare system? And I'm saying to somebody,
basically, remember that guy who there was the
Martin
heart
Skrelly
medication
or whatever,
and was like charged like 2 billion %.
Yeah, like what, like,
and was able to get away with it.
No, there's nothing ethical about that. Like, there's nothing ethical about the fact that there are people who have to ration out, their diabetes medication, or people who can't get, they can't afford healthcare, they can't afford their medication, so they just be effectively left to die, or left to kind of squeeze whatever they can or go bankrupt. Because so I think we have a system that's all messed up. And yeah, okay, great, a couple of bad actors got arrested, but there's a lot more. I'm a cynic about a lot of this stuff, and there's a lot more stuff to really fix if we genuinely want to do something about it. So yeah, okay, great, great, we arrested a couple people, maybe they go to jail, maybe not, but like, there's a larger issue to me. Your thoughts, Tony?
I completely agree. I think this is good, but it's not really helping the bigger problem, which is our healthcare system, which is a much bigger issue.
Yeah. No, for sure. So, and I don't know how you fix it, and even just if you focus in on just prescriptions and drugs and the whole way that is managed, it's it's certainly a complicated ordeal.
Yeah, no, it's not something. It's not an easy fix, but I think. To be, the leader of the free world and not kind of have some kind of handle on it is not good. And the fact that there are countries that do have, have far better, systems than us. It's like we should be striving to be that, and we're not. We're barely fighting to keep Obamacare, which I mean is not the greatest thing in the world, but it's better than what we had before. But like, there's far more we can do.
If you guys knew what I was paying for my health insurance, because now that I'm fully self-employed, it's insane.
Oh really? Yeah.
Are there any? Now I know that there's some tax breaks that you can get for that.
So
but
to be
it's
honest,
still money. It's still you still have to spend it.
No, it's a lot of money, and but
I've
at the same time, like I'm sure there was probably a cheaper way for me to go about it, but I also like what I didn't want to change. I like what I had, so I'm doing Cobra through my old employer, which is known to be more expensive. But it's ridiculous. It's almost like my rent. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. No, it's like paying 2 rents.
No, I'm lucky. I married a teacher.
Yeah.
New York teacher. So I have my health care is kind of, I have good health care. I don't have to worry about it. But, it doesn't, it's just, it's too many people who are either paying way too much money for, and in some cases people paying
and
a lot
only
of money
by myself. Imagine
coverage.
My dad, he was a business owner growing up, and he paid for me, my mom, and my sister. Yeah. And it's thousands of dollars a month, and it's insane. Yeah.
So no, it's like there needs to be some kind of fix for it. But we will see. There seems to be a growing push for it. But then there are, there with anything, there's lots of issues. How do you pay for it? How do you, But not our problem.
I think for me, just focusing in on the drug companies. That being able to act in behaviors such as holding back life-saving medication, right? Because of patent things when people are dying, or being able to charge rates that no one can afford, and people wind up dying because of it. To me, that's the immediate fix that where I'm like, okay, and look, I don't love the government being involved in every aspect of our lives, but when it comes to something like life-saving medication that people need, or not being, or making it illegal for drug companies to charge unreasonable rates for medication, or even just and even stuff that's not in the United States. There's been tales of drug companies holding back HIV medication, in Africa, stuff like that. So
we live in the most kind of,
to me, stuff like that. If you could start taking care of those things immediately, right? Which, once again, easier said than done. But for me, though, just things like that, that's for me some of the most upsetting things that I hear.
I just think, again, we were talking a couple weeks ago, like if you divorce morality from some of these things, like, when it comes to healthcare or economic systems, when you kind of uncouple that, it's really, you can rationalize any action, but it still is wrong. And so I think that's the issue, is that kind of we have a system that, morals are just divorced from it. It's like, oh, well, you don't have healthcare, too bad for you. Oh, your premium says that, like they've, even wanting to get rid of like pre-existing conditions or whatever. It's like, it's just we're the most advanced society in the history of the world. We can take care of our people, and so, it's crazy that people kind of have to suffer so much on top of having some kind of an illness or disease, and I just think it's just morally wrong, and there should be a better fix and a better way. And these executives can still make their money, and I get that it takes a lot of money and time and effort and innovation to creating and to coming up with some of these drugs, but there's got to be a better way than to charge inordinate amounts of money, or in some cases like get people hooked on drugs. There's just got to be a better way, and I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah. Okay. So. And with that, we hope that everyone is, continues to live a healthy and happy life. And so that's that.
Yes.
Anything else to add, Ryan?
No, I don't think I have. You watched Game of Thrones yet?
I'm waiting to binge.
You're missing out.
Well, I'm really missing out because then I get to watch it and not have to wait.
Yeah,
for
but the whole point. See, you should watch it every week because then you can engage in the kind of fan community and the discussion and
that's what I'm trying
the stuff
to avoid.
but you're gonna miss out because here's the thing, like there's so much that goes on, and there's so much cool like fan theories and the memes that have come out every week. Like, you're gonna miss out on it because if you get it all in 1 week, it's really hard, or one weekend, it's kind of hard to see. Like, there's there's one of my favorite things after each episode now are like the out of context like spoilers. So it'll be like 4 or 5 photos that, out of context, you have no idea what it means, but if you watch the episode, you're like, oh, that's hilarious. And so there's just like the first 2 weeks have been just some amazing stuff that you're gonna miss out because like you can't get that. It's like it's limited shelf life. Like, this stuff lasts for a week, and then you could go back and look it up, but like
you can't.
You're missing out.
It's just what I need, something else to gobble up my
time.
Look,
this is 6 episodes, and then you're now 4 episodes, and you're done. So
no. I'm saying just what I need, more fan and
doesn't matter. Like,
forums
and you should be part of this.
Okay, all right, fine.
Sorry, Tony, it's too late for you because you can't watch the whole thing, the whole show in a week.
People keep telling me, and I have moments of like FOMO, fear of missing out, and then other moments. Most of the moments, I'm okay.
Yeah, but missing out, Justin.
All right, I'll start watching it.
This last episode was hilarious.
Anyways, I'm going to Colorado next week for my first time.
Nice.
I hear it's like a really healthy city, right?
Well, it depends. Are you going?
I guess.
State.
I don't know.
Denver.
It's really Mormon, right?
Colorado?
Well, wait, yeah. No, Utah. I'm thinking Utah. Sorry, not Colorado. Although I think there are Mormons in Colorado, right? But no, I'm thinking of Utah. You're
there's
right.
Mormons everywhere.
Yeah, but like a huge percentage.
I hear everybody there.
But I think it's
healthy.
Utah. It's not Colorado.
Like similar to California, like they, So I'm excited.
Nice, but then you don't need to go there because everyone's healthy.
What?
I
like to be around like-minded people.
Oh. So are you gonna smoke ganja when you're there?
No, I don't do that.
Okay.
People have been telling me to bring it back, and I'm like, I don't want to. I like my life. I don't want to be in jail.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good here.
Not a good idea. Not right now.
Yeah. No.
Nice. Are you gonna where in Colorado are you going?
Denver.
Oh.
Yeah. My best friend lives there with her fiance.
Nice. Yeah, I've been wanting to go for a long time now.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'll let you guys know how it goes if I do hikes and stuff.
Yeah, I guess it's not skiing season anymore, right? Can you go ski on any of the mountains? Like, do they?
So it's funny because I have this ongoing debate between my sister and me, and basically like my friend who lives there has been saying that the weather's been really warm, actually like 10 to 15 degrees warmer than New York. And so I was excited to go to the sun. And she's like, you're not going to sun. You're going to Colorado. It's like the winter there. I'm like, it's not the winter there. But right now it's like very unclear. Even my friend was like, every day is a little bit different, the temperature. So I'm not really sure where I'm going to, but she told me to pack for both.
All right.
Yeah.
Summer and winter.
Cool.
But yeah.
That should be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you got any traveling coming up?
Very possibly. We'll have to wait to find out about that.
All right, fine. I'll shut up. I almost mentioned it earlier. Anyway, all right. Well, that's it. All of our stuff's at thegymwits.com. Check out our Instagram. We've been posting some fun videos of crazy, weird, creepy gym stories. I think we're going to try to get another one up today. So I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic, reminding you that truth does not sell.
I'm Tony Marinucci, a.k.a. Tips with Tony, a registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.
And we are the GymWits.